Trump's Iran sanctions are still strangling that country, and until Biden is able to lift them, he's probably not going to get Iran to the table. Dr. Trita Parsi joins us to discuss the issue. Check it out, leave your comments, ding the bell, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. But first, Dr. Trita Parsi is with us. He's the Executive Vice President of the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft. Been on the program many times over the years. An extraordinarily well-informed observer of the broadly the situation in the Middle East and with regard to Iran in particular. And Dr. Parsi, first of all, the website is quincyinst.org. And you can tweet Dr. Parsi at tparsi, P-A-R-S-I. Dr. Parsi, welcome back. I'm wondering if you could first just give us a shorthand kind of background on the situation with Iran from the deal that President Obama participated in, along with I believe it was 5 other nations in putting together to Trump's blowing it up to where we're at right now, and then we can go forward with what's happening with Biden and this diplomacy. But just for those people who may not have been paying attention.
Sure. So for years, there's been tensions over Iran's nuclear program, and there was a major breakthrough in 2012, 2013 that laid the way for multilateral negotiations between the United States, Germany, France, the UK, Russia, China, and Iran. And 2015, they reached a landmark agreement that blocked all of Iran's pathways to a nuclear weapon, and at the same time lifted sanctions on Iran, rehabilitated the country politically. It was hailed by all countries with the exception of 3, Saudi Arabia, Israel, and the UAE, 3 countries that incidentally have been pushing the United States to go to war with Iran. Trump comes in, he tears the agreement apart, walks out of it, reimposes sanctions on Iran, imposes further sanctions on Iran. After about a year, the Iranians start to reduce some of their obligations and as a result restarted elements of the program that they had kept dormant as a result of the deal. Biden comes in. He had promised that he would quickly get back into the agreement. It's part of the Democratic Party platform that there should be a quick rejoining of the nuclear agreement. We're 6 weeks into it. We have still not seen any clear gesture by the Biden administration to get back into the agreement. Instead, we're stuck on a rather childish fight as to who needs to take the first step, which is wasting very valuable time and is likely going to make the political cost and difficulty to get this deal up and running again all the more difficult.
Give us the details on that, who takes the first step dispute.
Well, so the Biden administration started messaging that they would get back into the deal if the Iranians reverse some of the steps that they have taken. The Iranians never left the deal. They've reduced some of their obligations. And Biden wants Iran to reverse all of those steps, be in complete compliance with the agreement before he takes any step at all.
You're talking their further enrichment of uranium, principally?
Enrichment of uranium, shipping out of that uranium, specific sites that have been closed, enrichment to higher levels, all kinds of different things that are very important that the Iranians have made very clear that they will reverse all of it, assuming that the U.S. goes back into the deal. And the Iranians are very worried, it seems like, because if they allow the United States to come back into the deal without lifting the sanctions that are actually violating the deal, and essentially continues to pursue Trump's maximum pressure strategy, then their fear is that if the talks then end up hitting a snag and not succeed and break down, they will be blamed for it, even though Biden actually never changed the policy of Trump. He continued to do exactly what Trump was doing, more or less, while getting the credit for simply wanting to talk, which Trump wanted to as well, but then the Iranians will get the full blame for it. So they've been resisting. Biden doesn't want to take the first step because he's afraid of looking weak and that Saudi Arabia and Israel and the UAE and Republicans will attack him. But at the same time, Biden did promise leadership, and leadership means taking the first step by definition. So there's an expectation that he would lead and take the first step now. And these issues, by the way, can be resolved easily behind the scenes. The problem is that once you make them public, which unfortunately the administration contributed to doing, then they become really tricky to resolve, because then it's all about saving political face.
Right, which takes us back to domestic politics. I believe Iran has a presidential election coming up this year, and certainly America is in a continuous cycle of political turmoil. To what extent are domestic politics driving these decisions on both sides?
Well, domestic politics is tremendously important, unfortunately, on both sides. The Iranians are in a tight situation. I mean, the Rouhani government only has a couple of effective months left. The elections are in June. By last 2 weeks of March, the Iranians are in an election season. As a result, cannot negotiate effectively. On this side, I think, unfortunately, the Biden administration seems to think that there is a way for them to strike a deal with Iran to actually get back into the JCPOA without paying a domestic political cost, without angering the Saudis and the Israelis and the UAE. And I simply don't think that's possible at all. I mean, Obama proved that it's not possible to do that. If you want this deal, you have to be ready to pay a political price for it. If you're not willing to pay the political price, then you shouldn't even pretend that you're interested in diplomacy.
What are you're talking about the Saudis, Israel, and the UAE. Biden has distanced himself from Netanyahu, who is, facing crises of his own as he's being prosecuted for corruption and other crimes. The Saudis, we just came out and pointed out that, Mr. Bonesaw ordered the murder of Jamal Khashoggi. And the UAE has, well, God only knows. I mean, certainly they played a big role with Jared Kushner's $1 billion. Why are we so concerned about those three countries in terms of pacifying them with regard to Iran?
I think it has a lot to do with how they can have an impact on domestic politics. But I want to say I absolutely agree with the premise of your question. It's a real question mark. Why are we willing to put their concerns and their interests and their preferences above the U.S.'s security interests? As Bill Clinton said after his first meeting with Netanyahu in 1996, who's the freaking superpower in this equation, in this relationship? Right. That seems to be a need of reminding here, because the Biden administration itself has said that this is a security imperative. We need to make sure that the Iranians don't have a pathway to a bomb. We need to avoid a war. And incidentally, perhaps even more importantly, the idea of striking this deal in order to avoid a war and avoid a weapon in Iran is absolutely imperative in order for the United States to be able to slowly but surely extract itself from the Middle East militarily, which is exactly what the American public wants. They don't want to have 58,000 troops in these endless wars in the Middle East. But without this agreement with Iran, it's a very difficult task to be able to achieve that. It's going to be difficult even with it, but it's necessary to have it because it's the one issue that actually can drag the United States back into a land war in the Middle East.
We have just 10 seconds. What can Americans do to encourage this process?
I think they can call their members of Congress and ask them to put pressure on the administration to live up to its promise to get back into the deal without causing complications.